Okay, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine walking into your local grocery store, turning down the beverage aisle, and realizing that Coca-Cola had been completely banned. Just erased, gone. Welcome to this explainer, where we take complex historical events and break them down so you can truly understand how they shaped our world. And today, well, we're looking at a story that sounds absolutely impossible to us right now. But over 100 years ago, the United States government nearly destroyed one of the most famous brands in human history. And it all started with a truly shocking accusation.
Literally no more Coke, no more cans, no more glass bottles, nothing. It's a completely unthinkable reality today, isn't it? I mean, Coca-Cola is woven into the very fabric of modern life. Yet, as our sources reveal, there was a real moment in time when this iconic brand was pushed to the absolute brink. And we aren't just talking about a bad quarter or a little PR crisis here, it was facing permanent destruction by the federal government. So to understand how we almost lost Coca-Cola forever, we actually need to rewind the clock a bit and look at the cultural landscape of America over a century ago.
Setting the stage in the early 20th century.
By the early 1900s, Coca-Cola wasn't just a successful beverage, it was exploding as a full-blown national sensation. Stores literally couldn't keep it on their shelves, and vibrant advertisements painted the country. It was the undisputed king of the new beverage market. But right underneath that massive wave of success, intense public fear was brewing over one specific ingredient: caffeine. At the time, fueled by the newly passed Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, many Americans were highly suspicious of stimulants. Driven by crusaders like government chemist Harvey Washington Wiley, doctors were issuing these incredibly dire warnings. They argued that the stimulant was actively damaging the nation's health and was especially dangerous for children. This wasn't just some fringe concern, it was a major public health debate.
And that's exactly when the government decided to step into the ring.
In 1909, the narrative abruptly shifted. Armed with new regulatory powers, federal prosecutors officially entered the fray, launching a massive, high-stakes legal case with, and I love this, a truly bizarre name: United States v. 40 barrels and 20 kegs of Coca-Cola. Now, the government wasn't just asking for a warning label, they took direct aim at the product itself, officially labeling the drink as adulterated and harmful. Just let that sink in for a second. Government officials argued in the strongest possible terms that the caffeine in Coca-Cola posed serious, unacceptable risks to the public. They were essentially declaring America's favorite beverage a public health hazard.
Now, as you can probably guess, an accusation of that magnitude didn't stay quiet for long. Newspapers across America plastered the battle across their front pages. The entire nation was gripped by the trial, trying to reconcile their love for this refreshing sensation with the terrifying warnings coming from medical professionals. A single, terrifying question echoed from coast to coast: could America's favorite drink actually be dangerous?
What started as a booming turn-of-the-century success story had rapidly spiraled out of control. That 1909 federal seizure of Coke barrels ignited a grueling, protracted legal war that would consume the coming years. This wasn't going to be a swift resolution. It was a marathon of intense courtroom battles that would ultimately determine the fate of the company.
Let's actually step inside that courtroom for a moment to see how it all went down.
Inside, the company's entire future hung in the balance. The atmosphere was incredibly tense, resulting in absolute chaos. The federal government was dead set on proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Coca-Cola was harmful, and the company fought back with absolutely everything it had. Expert witnesses clashed constantly. You had scientists hotly debating the chemical properties of the syrup, and doctors passionately arguing over the physiological effects of caffeine on the human body, especially on kids. It was a spectacular heavyweight clash of science, law, and public opinion, playing out in real time right under a national spotlight.
And I really want to emphasize the sheer stakes of this moment. If Coca-Cola lost, the brand might disappear forever. That's what makes this historical event so gripping. We aren't talking about a slap on the wrist or a simple corporate fine. This was a true existential threat. If the government proved its case that the drink was inherently adulterated and harmful, the entire enterprise could have been wiped out permanently. Gone.
So how did this monumental legal showdown actually end?
Well, after years of relentless legal onslaughts and brutal courtroom battles, Coca-Cola survived. The brand was not destroyed, but actually they didn't walk away completely unchanged either. Survival required making some very crucial compromises to appease the intense concerns that sparked the trial in the first place. Coca-Cola agreed to significantly reduce the amount of caffeine in their beverage. As a result, their famous formula evolved. Instead of disappearing into the abyss of failed companies, navigating this legal threat and making these critical concessions actually paved the way for unprecedented growth.
Fast forward to today, and the contrast is just staggering. Billions of servings of Coca-Cola are consumed globally every single year. Billions! It's an absolute cornerstone of global culture and commerce. Yet, very few people pouring a glass today realize that one single court case back in 1909 nearly changed everything. That fragile, chaotic moment in the courtroom stands in such stark contrast to the massive, billion-serving reality of the brand today.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. What if the verdict had been different? Think about how easily this iconic brand could have been relegated to the history books, remembered only as a brief, vaguely dangerous caffeinated fad of the early 1900s. It really just goes to show how the future of a global empire, and indeed, a massive piece of our modern culture, can hang entirely on a single historical courtroom battle. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the history behind the things you see every day, and I'll catch you next time.